Welcome to Melanin Combos, a sisterhood of mom friends having relatable and unorthodox conversations while holding space for each other and amplifying Black voices. Welcome to Melanin Combos. I'm Nikita, and today we're going to talk about some of the things I learned in my 20s and what I'm going to take with me and what I might just leave in the 20s. I'm 33 now. And yeah, my 20s was a very interesting time. I experienced a lot of things like major heartbreak, getting married, having a child, moving, a lot of transition. Like a lot of things happened in my 20s and I enjoyed it. I loved 20s. I wish I can go back to being 20s, but I think now being like in my 30s, I'm a little bit more settled and I'm enjoying this side. But I can reflect a little bit about some of the things that I experienced, some of the things that were really, really challenging, and how I have learned from them and moving forward, what I will take. So there's about 6 things that I pulled from my 20s that I want to just talk through today. So first things first, let's jump into negotiating my salary. I had never negotiated my salary prior to being 30. Actually, I think that's the first time I actually negotiated my salary with an employer. And I just could only imagine how much money I was leaving on the table just by accepting the entry level wage, by never like asking to see their benefit package or asking for more vacation time or just asking for more money because I felt like I was deserving of more money. I never did it. And the first time I did it, I was like, oh, I feel good. Like this feels good to ask for what I think I deserve because I have the experience and I think I don't deserve entry level. So at my job currently, I did that and I was pleased to be able to start, like my job has like steps. So I was able to start at step 3 because I asked about, okay, well, I have X amount of years of experience. Is it possible for you to start me at this salary rate? That's what I asked for. And they said yes, surprisingly. And I think for me, I think my fear of not negotiating my salary was the fear of them saying, okay, never mind, we'll get somebody else. I think that was the fear. I think that's a lot of our fears that we won't actually get the job. But I really do think that if they're even offering the job, that they actually do want you. And the worst that can happen is they say no and you say okay, and you start the next Monday. Like there isn't too much that could go wrong. And I think even if they do decide to give you like pushback, then we know like what type of employer we are potentially working for, and either we can choose to leave or strategically plan our exit to find something else. But I do think that was definitely one thing that I learned to continue to do. And it actually worked out in my favor, learning how to negotiate my salary, learning how to put my best foot forward and really leverage my skills that I have to say like, look, this is the reason why I'm an amazing candidate and why you should be paying me more than entry level. So yeah, that was number 1. Number 2, I would say is learning that like heartbreak and healing isn't linear. Like I remember in my 20s and even like later teens, how we talked so much about, oh, like time heals all wounds. And I don't think that's accurate. I don't think that time alone heals all wounds. Of course, over time, there's distance between what you've experienced, and you may not even see that person. So like that distance helps you to not feel that hurt and the impact of the hurt as often. But I'm not sure if the time actually is what's healing our wound, or if we are just being stagnant, or if we're just being apathetic to the hurt that we've experienced. I don't know if that is necessarily the case, that the time heals the wound. But what I will say is that I've experienced through like therapy that actively discussing and talking about and digging deeper about that hurt is what has healed that wound. When I was 24 or 23. I had a really huge breakup with someone that I really thought I would be married to. And it was like, I guess in hindsight, it really wasn't that big of a deal, but it felt like that big of a deal in the moment. And it felt like a lot of people knew. It felt like a lot of people were talking about it. I felt isolated from the friends and the group of people that we had around us, me and the individual I was dating. And it felt lonely, and it felt like I needed to obviously isolate myself from people, which I did. And I feel like people naturally isolate themselves from me as well. But I quickly realized as I met my husband that time alone didn't heal that wound. I needed to have conversations with myself and with God and with my therapist about what I was experiencing throughout that relationship and why it hurt and why that breakup hurt, and things that I contributed to that and things that my partner contributed to that, and just having that full conversation about what it was that I was experiencing. Because I did realize that from 23, that's when the relationship ended. And then I met my husband when I was 25. That those 2 years of not seeing this individual, not talking to them, not communicating with their friends, I realized that that alone was not healing my wound. Right? That wasn't healing the heartbreak. I still was hurt when anybody mentioned their name. I was still hurt when I thought about certain things. And even when I was sharing the story with my husband when we met, I was still hurt about that. So I know I needed to have a conversation and really dig deeper. Like, Nikita, why is this hurting you so much? What about the way the relationship ended and the things that transpired throughout the relationship that is causing you so much pain, and why you avoided it for this long? So the idea of time healing wounds, I don't think that is 100% accurate. However, I do think that over time, we get numb, we get apathetic because we put distance between ourselves and that wound. It feels like we're better, right? But I think it is important to have those check-in conversations with ourselves, with a trusted person, whether that's a therapist or a friend or a mentor, to really just process through that experience. Okay, so I think another thing, something that I'm experiencing now that I'm 30, is being okay to change what I do. I think when we turn 18 and we're in grade 12, when we're picking our courses to go to university, we think that we have to know what we want to do for the rest of our lives, which is absolutely ridiculous. I think it's ridiculous to ask 18-year-olds and 17-year-olds to pick a career at such a young age when our brains aren't even fully developed yet. But I think there's a lot of fear in changing that, and a lot of fear and uncertainty on not being sure. And I think 10 plus years later, being 30, realizing I actually enjoy and love different things, and the fear of evolving, of the fear of changing shouldn't stop me from pursuing those things. There will be so many additions of myself from now until the day that I die that I shouldn't fear that. I should embrace it and just really welcome the fact that I'm learning and that I'm growing, so that my passions and my desires will be different, right? And I will want to show up in this world differently. I think having core values and core principles, that's what grounds me. That's what keeps me on a particular path in life and how I do things. But I think the way in which that we express those desires, we express how we want to do our life's work, will look differently as we grow and as we age. Being a mom, that has changed some of the ways in which I do the work that I do and how I relate to my students and how I even relate to other parents, right? That has changed. And even some of the ways that I want to show up in the world and the work that I do. I work in mental health right now, but I'm very much passionate about diversity and anti-racism. And I want to pivot into something different, right? It's still something that I'm passionate about, but actually doing that work and creating policy, creating frameworks, creating curriculum around that is something that has really sparked my interest currently, and something that I'm really diving into and seeing how can I do that and not being afraid of that change, and just that evolution of Nikita, and just learning to embrace that and not boxing myself in, saying, okay, well, I went to school for child youth work. I did my psychology degree, so I always have to stay that course. I don't think that's true to ourselves and true to a lived experience. We will change, we will evolve, and we will want to do different things as we experience life, as we go through things. We are constantly reinventing ourselves, I guess is the word. We are constantly reinventing ourselves and seeking to represent or present ourselves in our most authentic ways. So that's another thing. So I think we're on 3. I think for myself, and I think this can relate to both romantic and platonic relationships, just knowing that this concept of struggle love, it doesn't have to be like your portion. You do not have to subscribe to struggle love. You don't. And in a romantic relationship, you don't have to give in to the idea that I need this person to not be kind to me or to give me the runaround or to give me stress and headache in order for it to be real or somehow validate the experience. I don't know why we do that, why we think that we have to experience this like hurt or like this pain or this struggle in order to validate the fact that this is a real, like, true love story. I don't think it's necessary. And I think that there is beauty in just like being on a narrow and like straight like path. There is beauty to just meeting someone and them sharing their intentions and being honest and true to those intentions. I think there is beauty to experiencing a relationship with someone that is honest with you up front and doesn't hurt you or doesn't make you second guess or think about whether or not you are deserving of this love or this affection, or just even, just breaking your heart or just thinking about how you can be better for that person. And I don't mean be better in terms of how you evolve and change. I mean, be better so that you can keep that person. I don't think that is necessary to experience a true love story. I think that we can have a love story that is integral, that is a representation of Christ's love for us. I think that we can have a love story that is simple and not full of drama or hurt. And I think that could be the same thing in our relationships and our friendships. Like, you can be direct about your intentions with a friend and being honest about like, this is what I'm looking for. This is what I am hoping to receive from you, and I'm hoping to give you in this experience of friendship. And I know that can be daunting and scary, particularly in friendship, because we have this idea that friendship should be organic only. And it's weird because as adults, being organic in relationship is not really feasible. There's a lot of places that we aren't clocking those hours with people. Like, we're not in school anymore where we're seeing the same people every day. We're doing a lot of things with the same people. That really isn't happening in adulthood. So we actually have to create these moments for ourselves, right? So organic relationships aren't happening in the same way as they did when we were kids. So we're gonna have to ask people out. We're gonna have to be very clear and upfront about what it is that we're looking for and how we want to navigate through our friendships, our relationships with each other. So I think that's something to think about and to consider. It's something that I've definitely learned throughout my 20s. I think I was able to come to a resolve about the relationship that I wanted. And if I'm being honest, sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. That directness worked in some cases where I was like very clear, like, okay, I'm really looking to grow with somebody and do life with someone and be vulnerable and transparent about like our experiences, whether that's faith or the relationships that we're in. Because at the time I wasn't dating anybody, and I expressed that and the person wasn't interested. So although it is hurtful, I think being upfront and honest about those things and being direct saves a lot of time in getting to know that person, right? So we still remained contact, but we weren't as close friends. And I think that saved us both a lot of time and a lot of wondering about who is this person in my life and where do I stand? The next thing that I learned in my 20s. Oh, okay. So I think I learned this from motherhood, and I became a mom at 29. So I learned this very, very quickly. And just the idea that the things that we do with our lives, people will either be happy with them or they won't be happy with them. But regardless, people are wanting you to do what they think is best through their lived experience, through their morals, through their principles, and what they deem to be right. Not always what's in the best interest for you. And I've had to learn that very, very quickly, especially because I wanted to parent my son differently. And I knew that in doing that, I would rub up against people, my parents, community that didn't believe what we believed was important or essential for raising a child. And I quickly realized that in some of our relationships, especially family relationships, they may disagree with you, and they may not like your decisions, but they're still going to show up in the best way that they know how. And so instead of me leaning in or giving in rather to their perspective, their experience, and their way of doing things, I can be bold, I can be courageous, and really stand firm on my principles, stand firm on what I believe, and raise my child in a manner that is true and authentic to us, knowing that they're still gonna love my child and they're still gonna love us regardless of our decision. So I think a lot of time for me anyways, having that approval from people, especially family, can literally have you in a chokehold, and have you feeling like, okay, well, if I don't do this, how will they view me? How will they view my child? How will people experience me? Will I regret this? But I think coming to a place where I'm making this decision through my lived experience, through my own perspective on life, through my own values, my own principles, and whatever else that governs the way you make decisions, and knowing that I'm making the decision in this moment, collecting the data, collecting all of what I need, knowing that this is a good decision for right now. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with regretting decisions that we made, because we made the decision in that moment, knowing that it was a good decision for that moment. 5 years later, we may look back and be like, oh, I wish I had done that differently, but it doesn't take away from who you are as a person. It doesn't take away from what you needed in that moment 5 years ago, right? You can still hold space for yourself, knowing that I did the best with the information that I had, with the resources that I had, the tools that I had, and I made a decision. Knowing that I may still love the decision 5 years later, or I may not. And that doesn't mean that you are a bad person or you did wrong by your children or by yourself. No, you just made a decision based on the information that you had and what was needed in that moment. So I think for me anyways, the fear of disappointing people, the fear of what will people think and say has slowly and is slowly being dismantled, because I am very much aware that we make our decisions through those lenses. We make our decisions through those experiences. And a lot of the time we want people to make the decisions based on the way that we make them, right? And I think people are well-meaning and the intent is well-meaning, but your decisions are yours to make. Your lived experience will be different, even if you are in the same family, even if you have a sibling, your experience will be different. So channeling or funneling your decisions based on those experiences, there's nothing wrong with that. And you are free to change your mind. I want you to be released from that and just really embrace the fact that you are free to change your mind. There's nothing wrong with changing your mind. And you can do that at any point in time. And you can learn to pivot from those experiences and be open to, yeah, like maybe regretting something later on in life. And that's okay. Like you can regret something and it not be a detriment or harmful to yourself. So I think that the lessons that I learned from being 20 and some of the things that I would leave behind would be not communicating or not being upfront with my intentions or my thoughts or my feelings, and just shying away from having those conversations, especially with like friends and like friend groups. I think that has not served me well. And I think that's something that now that I'm learning how to communicate, learning how to stand tall and boldly in my beliefs and how I show up and what I have to offer, I can now ask those questions and share my heart in ways that I wasn't able to before. And of course, like I mentioned, not negotiating my salary. That is something I will never do again. And I think just being more reflective about the decisions that I make and how I go about interacting with those decisions is something that is pivotal now that I am in my 30s, and just something that I think is helping me to not be so concerned with other people's thoughts and feelings about my life and my decisions. And of course, I'm not saying that I'm above reproach, and I'm not saying that I don't seek out support from wiser people. Absolutely not. I definitely am an advocate for mentorship. I'm an advocate for wise counsel. However, I do think that the choices are still ours to make. And regardless of what mentors or spiritual guides or whatever you want to call them are helping you along this life, the decisions are still yours to make. And the fear of disappointing people should no longer be my portion, is no longer what I hold on to. And I'm grateful that my 20s have helped me to learn those things and really prune and, yeah, help me to stand up a little bit more firm in my beliefs and how I want to navigate my life going forward. Something that I want to leave with you today, as I have been processing my 20s and the things that I've learned, I want to leave with you a thought about what your 20s have meant to you and some of the ways in which you have given up some things and how you kept some things, and how are you still navigating through the mentality and the perspective of the 20-year-old you. What are some of the things that you've held on to that maybe you should have given up, and how are you going to navigate that going forward? So yeah, talk to you soon.